Welcome to Frankly Developing. I'm your host Frank, and today we'll answer the question, should I check my variables for null? Often the answer is it depends. But in this case, I have used the same approach for over a decade in all of my projects. It may not be the ultimate solution, but so far it works really well. And everyone in these projects understands easily when to null check and when not to. Before I show you this approach, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. After that, we're ready to dive in. The approach requires us to look at the question from an architectural point of view. Consider your code base. It may be your whole repository or your backend project or a library or something like that. Your code, which is trusted, will interact with the outside world. This may be a file you're reading, a REST request coming in, or a call to your library being made. Whatever it looks like, you cannot be sure about the validity of what is coming from this outside world into your code. So our architecture should account for that by introducing this layer between the outside world and our main code base. The job of this layer is to validate all the data coming in from the outside. And this is part one of our answer to the question, should I check for null? If you're in this layer and getting uncontrollable inputs from the outside world, then absolutely yes. You have to validate that data. After that validation, a second architectural decision I recommend is that you keep your inner circle, your main code base that does not directly interact with the outside, free of any null usages. And that immediately gives you part two of the answer. If you are inside of your trusted code base, then no, don't check for null. All the data you get should have been validated already and not provide you any null values. So save yourself the trouble of writing null checks in the code there. It's less code that needs to be written, read, executed, and maintained, and that's always a good thing. Considering this validation layer, the null checking is really just a special case of the more general topic of model validation. Whatever data structures and variables you use in your trusted code base, the validation layer has to make sure that it is consistent. Maybe I'll show you in another video how you can define data structures that need little to no validation, but in general, there are always some checks to be done. You may need to set default values when the input lacks a value. You may want to normalize data, for example, lowercasing in a string. You need to ensure that all indexing structures rely on valid indexes, and so on. This simple architectural approach of keeping a cleanly separated validation layer is easy to realize and gives you this clear answer on where in your code base you need to have null checks and where they are not necessary. Thank you for watching and have fun developing.